So let's start off. Om Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya
Asmadacharya Vande Guru Paramparam.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitama Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti. Okay, so we had finished the first verse of Bhaja Govindam. We had covered a lot of area on karma. So today we will move on to the second verse. So please unmute yourself and chant with me. Muda jahi dhanagama trishnam
Krishna
Guru sadbuddhim manasi vitrishnam
Guru Sadbuddhim Manasi Krishna
Yallabhase nija karmopatam Vittam tena vinodaya chetam. Okay, so I'm muting you all. We'll do the discussion. So he says, first let us look at the word meaning so that we don't have to go back to that. He mudaha, muda means fool. Jahi hi. So jahi plus iha. Two words, jahi plus eva. Leave it here. Jahi means to renounce or to leave. Iha means here. So jahi hi, leave it here. Leave here. What? Dhana. Dhana is the wealth. Agama is coming or arrival of the wealth. So dhanagama, the coming of wealth, you drop it, you leave it here. And very importantly, the next word is trishnam. Trishna is the desire, the thirst. So the word jahihi has to be connected not to dhana agama, but to trishnam. So huge difference in the meaning. So the desire for wealth coming, that you must drop. Okay, he's not talking about dropping the wealth. The desire for wealth coming, that kama for wealth, that you have to drop. And kuru means to do. Sadbuddhi, with awareness or a clean buddhi. Manasi with Trishnam. So again, with Trishnam means Vina Trishnam. The first word was Trishnam, and here it is with Trishnam, Vina Trishnam, without desire in the mind, you must act. And after acting, yal lavase. So yat plus lavase. Yat means whatever. Lavase means whatever you gain, whatever you obtain. From what? Nija karma upataha. Whatever you obtain, yal lavase upataha, whatever you gain. Nija karma, from your own work. Nija is karma, from your own work. With that vittam, with that wealth. So you are working with all these adjectives before, the clean mind, without desire, and then you will get some amount of money. With that vittam, with that money, vinodaya chittam, you be satisfied. Let your mind be satisfied. That's what he's saying. Mind should not thirst after more. Okay, so muda jahi hi iha dhana agama trishna. So he's talking about wealth, and there is wealth is generally covered under one of the purusharthas, artha purushartha. Artha purushartha also covers security, also covers wealth. So there are two extreme positions that people take on wealth, right? So one is money is everything in life, and that is a delusion because money is not everything in life. And there is a equally deluded opposite extreme. What is that? Money is maya, totally useless. One should not touch it at all. So from the Shastric point of view, Please do not unmute yourself. You're disturbing the recording. Okay, I'm just muting all again. Okay, let me just make sure that you can't unmute. All right. Okay, so both are delusions. Money is everything in life is a delusion. Money is totally useless is also a delusion. One should not touch it at all. That is a delusion. So Shastra says basically that both these extreme positions one should avoid. You should have balanced understanding. And finally, if you remember that everything in creation is manifestation of the Lord himself. So it is Brahma Rupam only. Everything is Brahman Rupa, the form of Brahman only, including money, including knowledge, including power, including wealth. And since everything is Brahman, and Brahman is nothing but auspicious. So everything is auspicious. And then we should remember that all these three, your money, your power, and the knowledge, all these three, they have a critical role in our lives. And that is why in our culture we respect all the three. Saraswati, which is knowledge, Lakshmi, which is money, and Durga, which is power. All the three are respected as goddesses. And this background, once we keep in our mind, then the verse, what is being suggested through the verse will be clearer. Remember that Shankaracharya has no intention of insulting or disparaging money, because what he's pointing out is that money and happiness, there are two things which everybody wants, money and happiness. He's pointing out that money and happiness do not have a karana karya sambandha. There is no cause effect relationship between money and happiness, right? So how do you prove that? So there is what we call a particular rule which we use. I don't know if how many of you have heard it before. It's called Anvaya Vyatireka logic. That is the Tarka Shastra idea. Anvaya Vyatireka. So it goes like this: if X is there, Y is there. In X is not there, Y is not there. So the first portion when is called coexistence. When money is there, happiness is there. That is called coexistence. And or co-presence rather. Wherever there is money, there is happiness. This statement is Anvaya, which is co-presence. And the second statement, wherever there is no money, there is no happiness. This is called the Vyatireka statement. So this is the way this logical structure is worded. Wherever there is money, there is happiness, Anvaya. Wherever there is no money, there is no happiness, Vyatireka. Okay. So what does it prove? The conclusion from here is that money is not the cause of happiness. That conclusion has to come. And therefore, Shankaracharya says, Hey Mudaha. Muda is addressing all of us. Of course, here in this particular background, he's addressing the old man who was studying grammar. But through that old man, he is addressing all of us. Why? Because we are all fascinated with money. We are all fascinated with external objects. And Maya, of course, is always more beautiful than Atma, right? Atma is formless, has no, way of recognizing it. And therefore, most of us fail to recognize. But Maya is beautiful. Maya is seen all the time. And therefore, it is easier to recognize Maya and become fascinated with Maya. And therefore, we are all fascinated with money, external objects, people, all these things hold our fascination. And this fascination is often so strong that we do not recognize, we do not perceive that these objects are all temporary, and therefore they can never be a cause of permanent happiness to us. We forget the rule that temporary objects can give only temporary happiness. If you want permanent happiness, you have to go to a permanent source of happiness. An object is only a temporary source. So he says, Jahihi Trishna Dhana Agama. So Dhana Agama Trishna is the desire to accumulate more and more wealth. That desire we also call greed. So he says, Jahihi, please give up this greed for wealth. As I said before, remember that Shankara is not taking a blanket criticism of money. Wealth is important, all of us know. It's fulfillment of basic fundamental needs, basic needs need of ours. Plus, for the development of society, also money is needed. A society which does not generate wealth will not progress economically, right? We all know that. And therefore, Shankara is not criticizing in a blanket manner. He is criticizing the Trishnam. That is why the word is there, Trishnam. He's criticizing the greed for the money, the craving for the money. He's not criticizing money itself. And why is the greed bad? Because it's a very strong emotion. Why are strong emotions bad? Because in the face of strong emotions, the discriminative faculty of a human being stops. Like the intellect is unable to function rationally in the face of very strong emotion. We all know that, right? When you are very angry or very upset, it is not possible to think clearly, and decisions made in the grasp of very strong anger or very strong grief, any strong emotion for that matter, any decision made while there is a very strong emotion grasping your mind, the intellect is likely to make wrong decisions. And therefore, it's a fundamental rule that whenever you have to make an important decision, do not make it if you are emotionally upset, because you're more than likely that decision will be wrong. So with that, because of that, and greed, of course, is a very strong emotion. Everybody has a desire to have more money. That greed, as long as that craving is there, your mind is not thinking rationally. You are not able to distinguish between what is wrong and what is right. And therefore, such in the grasp of such raga, the attachment to money is raga only. In the grasp of such raga, decisions are more likely to be incorrect than correct. And therefore, Shankara is asking us to give up that craving for money. And again, I will mention, he is not asking us to give up money per se. And this misinterpretation that Shastram looks down upon money and wants us to give up all the money is a very common misinterpretation in India, especially among sannyasis, because they think that renunciation means giving up the money also. It's a fact that in the formal renunciation, you're not supposed to have anything. But the reasons for that are completely different. But the interpretation of these kind of verses in the Shastram is to be interpreted as giving up the attachment to money, not the object, any other object also, not the object itself. It is the attachment which has to be given up. It is the attachment which is the cause of all problems. Swami Chinmayananda, from Chinmayananda ashram, he used to quote the example of Alexander the Great. So there is a story that when Alexander the Great, he had won lots of battles, he had a lot of money, and he had lots of lands at his disposal. He was the emperor. So when he died, naturally for an emperor there was a funeral procession, and Alexander had left instructions that the his coffin which was being carried should have 2 holes from which his hand should hang out, like that, and the palm should be seen. Can you guess what was the reason for that palms to be seen?
Yes, he
I
wanted
go empty-handed.
Yes.
He goes empty-handed.
Yes.
That's a very beautiful story. So at the peak of his reign, Alexander realized that all the money that he got and all the power that he had, nothing could be taken. So that he had the instructions to show that whatever you have in this universe, acquire here, that has to be left behind here only. That's what he says. Leave it here only. Cannot be taken on a last journey. And then Kuru Sadbuddhim Manasi with Trishna. So Manasi means in the mind. And Sadbuddhi here, Buddhi should be not taken as the intellect, Buddhi should be taken as the thought, as your vritti, the vritti of the mind. So Sadbuddhi means the Buddhi which is auspicious, which means the mental focus on Govinda, the Lord, because you have to borrow from the previous verse, Bhaja Govinda. So that vritti, Bhaja Govindam, where you are thinking of the Lord, That vritti should be there in the mind. So manasi sadbuddhi, with that vritti in the mind, with Trishnam, the mind which is free of Trishna, free of desire. So this is the mark of a karma yogi. So those who have been there in the Gita classes will know that the karma yogi has one primary objective. All his actions are offered to the Lord. All the results of the actions are received as prasadam for the Lord. That means this karma yogi has never loses sight of Ishvara at all in his daily work. He never loses sight of Ishvara. His life is Ishvara centric. Ishvara is in the middle of every single action of his. And if you have to have a mental focus on Ishvara 24/7, what is required? Your mind should be free of strong emotions, should be free of strong distractions. And therefore, it says with Trishnam, Vina Trishnam or Vigata Trishnam. Vigatam means having gone, a mind from which all Trishna has gone away. And this mind, a mind, remember, can focus only on one thing at a time. And I know it's very fashionable to say we multitask. But if you look at your mind and try to study its working, you will find that if you are trying to do two things, it is impossible to do two things. We often deceive ourselves into thinking that we are multitasking. But what you are actually doing is your mind is focusing on one task, removing itself from there, focusing on the second task, removing itself from there, focusing back onto the first task. So it is interrupted work on one, then another. That is what we call multitasking. It is not possible for the mind to do two, three things at once. And we think it is fashionable, but it is not. So a mind can focus either on money, and that money can be an all-consuming passion, which is, of course, most people today, they do that only. And for a lot of people, when they see us teachers teaching, we spend a lot of time and energy on preparing for the teaching, all of us. So the question we are asked is, how much do you get paid out of it? And we say we don't get paid. Most of them don't believe us or think we are idiots. So this, most people in this world today, for them, any activity has to have a reward. And they don't understand a reward which is non-monetary. So again, that is one thing. Mind can either focus on money as an all-consuming passion, or it can focus on Ishvara again as a all-consuming passion. But it cannot do both. It cannot passionately focus on money and passionately focus on Ishvara. So these lines here in this verse, this particular verse brings out a very basic teaching of Vedanta. What is that? Freedom from insecurity cannot be obtained by looking outwards. Freedom from insecurity has to be obtained by looking inwards. Why? Because this freedom is, when I say freedom from insecurity, what is that? What is this insecurity? The insecurity is the idea that I will not be there tomorrow, that I am a finite person. That is the insecurity. And therefore, all of us instinctively desire to be eternal, desire to be infinite. And every object outside us is finite, is temporary. And because it's a temporary object, it can never be the cause of freedom from finitude. Very, very important things, that we basically are infinite. And therefore, everything outside us is finite. A finite object can give you only finite phalam. A finite cause can give you only a finite benefit. And moksha is infinite. And therefore, any object outside us, being a finite object, can never be the cause for freedom from finitude, which is moksha. Why do you look inside? Because you are infinite. And only that Atma which you are, only that Atma can give you total freedom, can give you infinite freedom, which is called moksha. That freedom, that moksha can never be available outside you. Which is also why we say that karma can never give you moksha, because karma is finite. Every karma has a beginning, every karma has an end. A finite karanam can never give you anything but a finite karyam. A finite karyam is not moksha. Moksha which comes and goes or moksha which begins is not a moksha at all. So don't look outside you. Moksha is not available outside you, and therefore you should turn inwards. And for that, a certain peace of mind is required, a certain quietude of mind is required. So he says, Yel labase vittam nija karmo patam. So yet vittam labase. With the money that you earn, nija karma upata, with your own efforts. And you have to supply here with your own dharmic efforts. It cannot be adharmic efforts. What should you do? Tena vinodaya chittam. Let your mind be vinodaya. Tena. By that, tena refers to vittam which you have earned. By that wealth, by that money which you have earned with your own efforts, vinodaya chittam. Vinodaya means to be content. So vinodaya chittam. Let your mind be content. Do your work to the best of your ability. Do it honestly. And you may not become a multimillionaire, but you will definitely make some money out of your effort. It may be less than what you expected, or it may be little more than what you expected, or it may be just about what you expected. Any of these cases, you don't be content. You be content. Don't look at your neighbor and say that I need the things which he has. So you have bought a Maruti car today and your neighbor buys a Hero Honda. Don't look at that car and say, okay, I need to change my car. The Maruti car got 4 wheels. The Hero Honda also has 4 wheels. Both do the same job. They take you from one place to another place. So learn to be content with what you have. This contentment is very, very important for a spiritual seeker, because Vedanta cannot work on a restless mind. That's why we keep saying Chitta Shuddhi, Jnana Yogyata, Karma Yoga, Upasana. Everything basically gives you a mind which is free of disturbances, where your FIR, the frequency of disturbances, intensity of disturbances, and the recovery time is minimum. Such a mind which has minimum disturbance, and whatever disturbance it has is of minimum intensity, and whenever there is a disturbance, it comes back to its own state quickly with the least amount of loss of time. That mind is a quiet mind. It's a rest mind which is a rest, and only on such a mind Vedanta will work. What is the purpose of money? The Shankara says in his commentary, Dhanam Dharmartham. Money is for the purpose of doing dharma, good karma. Why? Because dharma will give you, dharmic karma will give punyam. Punyam alone will give you security and happiness. A punyavan will be happy, right? But a dhanavan need not be happy unless he is also a punyavan. A man who has a lot of punyam will definitely be happy. A man who has a lot of money need not be happy unless he also has a lot of punyam. We are not saying money and punyam are opposed to each other. They are not. All depends upon the choices you make. So with this, the first verse is over. The second verse is over. I'm just unmuting you all in case you want to ask any questions. You can unmute yourself and ask.
Ravi sir, I have a question.
Yes, please.
We have now at this age, because we have children, and now we have this drive to earn money for our children. Because in today's times, everything, if you have 2 children, more money, more more expensive, and more for the future education. So when we have that drive, and when we are praying also sincerely and daily, and we are in truly immersed in our prayers. So both this as well as desire for money is that okay to really have this full desire that I want to earn more money for my children?
It depends on many things. One is okay, earning money to take care of our children is okay desire, because it is your responsibility to take care of your child. Okay. Now, does taking care mean that I give him, the latest iPhone and I want to earn for that an hour and a half lakh rupees?
No.
So that kind of thing. It's
Yes.
all relative. will you be satisfied with giving him a decent education? The
Yes.
rest of it he can do on own. Or do you want him to send to Harvard University? So all those things. I mean, there are no yes and no answers over here. It's basically how much of your mind is diverted because of that activity. How disturbed you get. The basic idea here in all our discussions is the concept of FIR. FIR is frequency, intensity, and reaction time. Frequency of disturbance of your mind, intensity of disturbance of your mind, and how quickly you get back your state, your poise. These three things, if they are all minimum, then whatever you're doing doesn't matter. Whether you're earning 1 lakh a month or 1 crore a month, if your FIR is low, you're okay, you are there.
Acharya ji, may I please ask, how does this philosophy of having a desire for children or otherwise be similar to that of a karma yogi like Ishwar Arpanam, Ishwar Prasadam? If one is anyways a karma yogi,
Yeah.
then this desire, how does that merge into it? It will just come as a desire, you will just work for Ishwar Arpanam and Ishwar Prasadam.
No. The only thing which happens is that the work which you are doing, you will offer that to the Lord. That's all. That is the definition of karma yogi. There is no separate work that you do. The same work that you are doing, when you offer it to the Lord, you become a karma yogi. It is not that you're going to change the quality of your work or the nature of your work.
But the nature of desire?
The nature of desire, you can tell the Lord that this is for, I'm doing this, I'm giving it to you. The point is when you offer, remember that whenever there is a karma, there is a desire. Okay. You cannot do karma without a desire. You are offering that particular activity to the Lord. So let us say that you are working 12 hours a day. You are offering that to the Lord. You are saying that I'm working 12 hours a day. The benefit is for my earning money for my children. This offering, I'm making it to you. And then you give me what you think is right. If you still get your 10 lakhs a month, you'll be happy. If you get only 1 lakh a month, you should be happy. That is a karma yogi. You don't change what you're doing. You don't change the purpose of what you're doing. Because getting money for your children is a sanctioned activity by Shastra. You have to take care of your children.
Right. It is the outcome that we should not be bothered about.
I won't say it should not be bothered about, because the outcome is there. And once you know the outcome only, you are able to decide what to do to get that outcome.
Mhm.
So very often people describe karma yoga as with not bothering about the outcome. That is not true. If you don't bother about the outcome, your work will be shoddy. And a shoddy work is not given to the Lord. The work that you give to the Lord has to be of the highest quality. Like when you do puja, right? If you have some second-hand apples and today's apples, which one will you offer to the Lord? You'll offer today's fresh apples, right?
Yes.
Similarly, whatever activity you do, your best activity has to be offered. You cannot offer second-hand activity to the Lord.
I think there's a fine line over there, probably, between the two.
The only line you should draw is, will I get disturbed if I don't get what I want?
Right. Yes.
Acharya ji.
Yes, please.
FIR, you just mentioned, so that is frequency, intensity, and R stands for?
Recovery time. How quickly you recover your poise.
So
mental poise.
how does one measure that?
You have to measure it.
But when you're angry, how can you have that much sense that this is my recovery time? Buddhi is so blessed when you're angry.
You are thinking that you have no option but to be angry. That is what Vedanta is trying to tell you. That you have an option not to be angry. So the first time you'll be angry, second time you'll be angry. But every time you listen to the class, you will replay in your mind what all you have done, and you'll know that, okay, this time I was wrong, this time I was wrong. So the next time it comes up, maybe Vedanta hopes that maybe you will say, okay, let me decide whether to get angry or not. That is a very big step.
Okay.
There is a saying in Sanskrit. I don't know if I remember it, but basically it says Uttama Shana Kopasya, the one who is the highest quality of mind, Uttama. For him, Kopasya shanam. Kopasya means anger is for an instant, shana. And madhyame ghatika dvayam. For the person who is of a medium quality of mind, he gets angry for 2 hours. And then the person who is a lower quality, he is angry for the whole night. And the person whose mind is the worst quality, he is angry throughout his life. Because it's a very basic measure. But what you should do is you should be aiming at Uttama Shana Kopasya. And even if I get angry, which may be natural, as I get angry only, I control. It may not be possible in the beginning stages. It may take months, it may take years, but that is the objective. If you cannot do that, you are wasting your time on Shastra. You have to follow the Shastras, teachings. And for that, you have to have faith that yes, the teachings are good for me. The more you follow, the more you will realize how easily you are able to do. There are many in this class itself who are long-term students. Ask them, how did they cope initial days? They're all doing the same thing. In the beginning, it was difficult, but now it has become second nature. I have seen some of them who used to, blow their tops at the drop of a hat. Now nothing bothers them. It's not that the nature has changed drastically, it's that they have changed. They have learned to, bring a gap between the trigger and the reaction. They no longer react, they only act.
Ravi sir.
Yes, Kush.
Sir, actually, lately I've realized that again the mind is jumping to the external objects. I was very much trying to cope up with Vedanta, but lately I'm doing a lot of things. Like I told you MSc with Vyasa and then flying. So when I'm actually focusing too much on the action, I forgot I will not say I forget, but I kind of imbalance the sadhana part. Can I ask for your guidance?
Would you be specific?
Okay, if it's specific, for example, right now I came to work out and I have a class after this teaching yoga.
Okay.
After that, I have evening classes for my online MSc.
Okay.
Then I have to plan my morning. Then when I get up in the morning, again the whole day starts. I forget to think about Shiva all the time.
No, you don't have to, even one resolution at the start of the activity saying that I'm offering this to you, that is fine.
Yeah, that is always there. That is always
fine.
there.
So that is slowly you're making every fresh action that you do, just offer it. That is fine. I'm not saying you should think only about Shiva, because obviously you need to think about what you're saying also, right? Or what you're doing also.
Sure. And lately, like you told us to at least take 1 hour for Vedanta, like once a day to actually recall the teachings.
That is very good. Very good.
Thank you so much, sir.
So Om, could I ask you, how do you offer your work to Shiva?
It's just a resolution. It's mental kalpana.
Okay.
Saying that I'm giving this to you.
Okay, wonderful.
Sankalpa we call, no, in Hindi. Sankalp jo bolte hain. You just give it.
I usually also do it with japa. So all the time when I'm doing my work, I continuously.
You can do it. There are many ways of offering, and the Lord understands all sort of offerings. But the important thing is that the idea in your mind should be that this is being done as an offering to the Lord, not solely for me. You may expect the result, but the offering has to be made to the Lord. That is Ishvara Arpana. Okay. Any other questions? Right. So we will now move on to the next verse. So please unmute yourself and we will look at the third verse. So please chant with me. Nari stana bharana bhidesham. Drishtva maga mohavesham. Etanmamsavasadi vikaram. Manasi vichintaya varam varam.
Manasi vichintaya varam varam.
Okay. Now we look at the words first. So Nari is a woman. Sthana bhara. So is breasts that are full of milk. And Nabhi Desham. Desham means in the area of, so Nabhi is the navel. So in Nabhi Desham, in the area of the navel. Drishtva, having seen. Maga. Maga is to be looked at as Ma-ga. So Ma means don't, and Ga is for go. So Maga, don't go. Moha Vesham. Moha Avesham. Moham is delusion. Avesham is being controlled by. So Moha Vesham, don't fall under the delusion. You should remember that etat, this is Mamsa Vasa Adi. Mamsam is flesh. Vasa is fat. So Mamsa Vasa Adi, this flesh and fat. He's talking about the two aspects that he has talked about the sthana, the breasts, and about the nabi, the navel. He's saying that don't fall under the delusion. Remember that mamsa vasadi, they're flesh and fat only. Vikaram, and the appearance only. This appearance that they are fat and flesh. Manasi vichintaya. Think about it in the mind. Meditate upon that in the mind. Varam varam, again and again. So that is what he's talking about. Now, he's basically talking about various types of desires. Okay. So desires are of two types. So one is Swabhavika desire, also called Agantuka desire, which means no, there are two desires, Swabhavika desire and acquired desires. That is, Swabhavika desire is natural desires, and Agantuka desire is that which is being acquired. So desires are two types: natural desires, which you are born with, and acquired desires, which you can acquire. Right? Now look at the acquired desires first. These acquired desires, Agantuka desires, can vary from individual to individual, and can vary from time to time, place to place, environment to environment. Right? So today, for example, we have desire for mobile phones or LED TVs. Whereas 50 years ago, those who lived, that desire would not have been there at all, because those objects were not there. So these acquired desires are not natural, they're acquired, and they can be dropped. They can be, because using your willpower, you can change your taste in maybe food, in books, in electronic items. So these are not natural to you. They are acquired, they are picked up, and therefore they can be tampered with by use of your willpower. Now there is Swabhavika Kamaha, Swabhavika desires, natural desires, which are universal desires, the instinctive desires, desire for health, for security, for comfort, for sexual relations. These are all instinctive desires which a person is born with. And therefore, there is no use of the willpower to stop the rise of these desires, because the rise you cannot stop. That comes with you as part of the package with which you are born. What you can use the will is to properly direct the desires. So here, Shankaracharya is talking about one of the strongest instinctive desires, which is the mutual attraction between males and females. So he says Nari Sthana Bhara, which means the full breasts of a woman, and Nabhi Desham. So the location of the navel, the area of the navel, Drishtva, having seen, Maga, do not go there, and Moha Vesham, do not fall under the influence of that desire. So what did we talk about in the previous sloka? We talked about the desire for wealth, which is also very, very strong. And in this sloka, Shankaracharya is pointing out that one of the strongest passions that occupies the human mind, the attraction to the opposite sex. And I must point out here that though the verse is worded in a language which is addressed to the male, these ideas are equally applicable to females also. They're applicable to both sexes. So please don't look at it as something being aimed at a female. You can reverse all the words, and for a girl also, as far as her attraction to the male is concerned, is equally applicable. So Shankara wants us to understand that such strong passions are damaging to a spiritual seeker. Why? For the same reasons which we talked about in the previous verse, that passions are strong enough to distract the mind from any spiritual pursuit. Again, is he asking us to suppress the passion? A very common critique of Hindu darshanam, of Hindu philosophy, which is based on an incorrect interpretation of the scriptures. And sadly enough, many teachers, many Hindus, spiritual teachers, scriptural teachers, they talk about suppression of passion as a sadhana. That is not the intention of any of the Indian scriptures, because Indian scriptures show a very deep understanding of the human mind. They know that this swabhavika kamaha, these passions which are natural to you, born because you are born with a certain mix of gunas, sattva, rajasa, tamas. There is a certain mixture with which all of us are born. This certain amount of prarabdha karma which with all of us are born. That prarabdha karma has given us a particular guna mix, a particular nature, and all these natural desires are born from that nature, and therefore they can never be suppressed. There is no role for willpower in preventing these emotions or these desires from surfacing. They will surface because they are part of your nature. Nature can never be suppressed. Right? That is why it's called nature, that which is natural. So Hindu Shastra, the scriptures will never advise a suppression. Why? Because suppression leads to long-term disturbances in the mind. And that is precisely what we don't want, because we keep saying that your mind has to be as quiet as possible. And therefore, I have to remember that whatever is a swabhavika kamaha, natural desire, I don't have any choice regarding the existence of this desire. And therefore, I should never feel guilty about these desires. I have the desire, yes. I understand that it is because of my nature. I know that I do not have a choice regarding the existence of the desire. I did not invite the desires. And therefore, there is no purpose in my feeling guilty. So Shankaracharya here is prescribing a method of meditation to show us the defects inherent in the human body. He is not asking us to totally avoid pleasures of the flesh, totally avoid pleasures of mixing with the opposite sex. He is not asking. He is just pointing out that an obsession, unnecessary obsession, over obsession with the flesh is not conducive to spiritual maturity. And therefore, he is pointing out a method for us to control these passions slowly. So he says, etan mamsa vadi. So, etat mamsa vasa adi. Etat mamsa vasa adi. Okay. So, etat means this body. This body consists of what? Mamsa, flesh, vasa, fat, that is marrow, adi, etc. So you would add there blood, bones, all those things, nerves, everything. So this body consists of flesh, fat, bones, blood, nerves, everything that you can think of. And may you contemplate upon this fact that that person whose face you find so attractive, or whose navel you are finding so attractive, manasi vichantaya varam varam, may you contemplate again and again on the fact that vikaram, this body which you are so attracted to, is nothing but a collection of flesh and bones and blood, etc. Right? So that you have to continuously meditate until you are able to distinguish that this is actually only a mass of these various components, and that the extra attractiveness which I have superimposed upon that body is nothing but a product of my mind. So if you meditate like that, then you will be able to slowly overcome the attraction. So we have to remember that Atma Ananda, the Ananda which is from the Atma, is much stronger than any happiness which we get from any object, any Vishaya. So Atma Ananda is a much, much, much stronger source than Vishaya Ananda. Indeed, Atma Ananda is the very source from which Vishayananda is born, because Vishayananda is nothing but reflected Atma Ananda, reflected in the particular Vishaya, in the particular object which we are choosing at that moment. And that is why he's saying that if you are strongly attracted to someone or something, that you have to, from these two verses, we have to extract this meaning. Whenever I am strongly attracted to someone or something, my intellect should send up a red flag, and you should suspect that there is a adhyasa, there is a superimposition. You are superimposing a value to that person or object which is not in accordance with the reality. That is the purpose of this. Whenever you feel very attracted, it is a natural attraction because you are built like that. But instead of straight away falling and chasing that attraction, you should sit down and think that yes, the attraction I'm feeling is very real, it's very strong. And that person is nothing but a collection of bones and blood and nerves. And therefore, there is an additional value which I'm giving to that person, which I'm attributing to that person, which is not actually in accordance with that reality. Right? Because we all know, when you desire, so to say, another person, you are not looking at the body of that person alone, but you are undergoing a mental process of adhyasa, of superimposing very many things onto that person which may not be in accordance with reality. What is the proof? The same person whom you found attractive 10 years ago has begun to lose that fascination because daily contact has begun to wear out the adhyasa, has begun to wear out the superimposition. I know it looks very, very dry and drab, but this is the process. We have to remember that Shankaracharya is not frowning upon pleasure. He is not objecting to pleasure. He is objecting to unnecessary preoccupation with the pleasure. Getting pleasure out of some contact is great. That is fine. The contact comes, the pleasure comes, it is over. But if I am consistently thinking and obsessed with that pleasure, then it becomes a major distraction in my life and leaves me with no time for spirituality. Obviously, life will be very boring without the various sensory and material pleasures that is available to us, by way of people, by way of the opposite sex. Enjoying them all is fine. But the warning is that a total preoccupation, a total obsession with them is not appropriate. And this warning is basically for a spiritual seeker. So there is what is being recommended to us is moderation in material enjoyments, including enjoyments of the flesh. Why? So that the bulk of our time and energy can be utilized in a spiritual pursuit. That is the interpretation of verse number 3. Again, I'll open up for you in case any questions are there.
Om Acharya.
Om.
Can you please explain the meaning for the vikara?
Vikaram basically is a product. In this context, it's called a product. So the body is a product of various things. What are the various things? Bones, flesh, all those things.
Okay, thank you.
Vikaram is another word used for karyam, product.
Okay, because some other language I come from, vikara means like ugly.
No. Vikaram in Sanskrit, it means change, but it also has a meaning of product.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, can we then, sorry,
No, please go
Acharya
on.
ji. I just wanted to find out, so can we associate this with Shadvikara that we've learned in Tattva Bodhanada, that our body is subject to
all
Yes,
the different.
you can take that also, and then whenever you fall in love with somebody desperately, you have to tell yourself that this body is subject to Shabvikara. So what is it that I'm really seeing? See, it's not to be taken as, you have to dislike that person, but it should be taken as know the correct one. Don't be obsessed. Loving somebody is fine, but total obsession with that person and the activities so that I cannot think beyond that, that is the one which is injurious to your spiritual progress. The correct interpretation is very necessary.
Ravi,
Yes, Anjali.
I was wondering, how does brahmacharya come into picture, like comparison to, if we compare it with the moderation and material enjoyments?
No, please come again.
So usually we practice brahmacharya in spiritual setups and for spiritual growth. And since here we are saying that moderation should be practiced and should be maintained, not letting go of anything altogether is also not
See,
recommended.
brahmacharya basically consists of two words. What is that?
Brahma.
Brahma and Charati, the one who
Walks on
seeks
the
the
path
knowledge
of
of
Brahman.
Brahma. Yes.
Okay, so brahmachari is basically not a person, not a person who has no connection with the opposite sex. A brahmachari is a person who walks on the path of Brahman. And the brahmachari is called, the meaning of unmarried or celibate person is given to it because in the Gurukul, where he is studying, he's a student. There he is not married, doesn't have a grihastha life. So there, that is the place from which brahmachari celibate has been extracted. But really speaking, it's not so.
Okay. So when, for example, in the Shivananda ashrams, when we say we are practicing brahmacharya, what does that exactly mean?
There are some people who are celibate, so they take themselves as brahmacharis.
Right.
Okay, so even in most of the scriptural texts, a brahmachari is taken as celibate. But for the purpose of, like once you move out of that ashram, the first brahmachari ashram, your student stage, then as a grihastha, are you saying that you should not be practicing spirituality at all? No. Grihastha means you are married. Therefore, in the larger context, the brahmacharya is taken as an appropriate contact with the opposite sex. Not having inappropriate contact is a better what you call interpretation.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody?
Though maybe it's not related here, Acharya, but under the Yama Niyama, the Brahmacharya, how do you address that under yoga philosophy, Brahmacharya?
Brahmacharya has to be taken as appropriate contact with the opposite sex. If you're taking it as inappropriate contact, if you're saying that brahmachari means total celibacy, it's not going to work in a society, right? One of the reasons for your scriptures not being popular is this particular interpretation that yogis have to be celibate. Not necessary at all. In fact, if you look at your scriptures itself, the greatest of all sages, they have all had wives. If you look at your Upanishads, most of the acharyas have been married. So the interpretation is a particular form of interpretation has come from a celibate area. And that some teachers have been celibate, so they are given it this particular. For example, Shankaracharya himself. The moment he says Manushya, for him, you are not a Manushya unless you are a sannyasi. A sannyasi is celibate because he is given up everything else. That interpretation is not appropriate for the purpose of propagation. And that is why in our case, we say that no. Brahmacharya means two meanings. One is the person who is on the path of Brahman, on the path of Jnana. Another is to keep his mind from being unnecessarily disturbed. He restricts his contact with the appropriate sex, with the opposite sex, to appropriate people, so his wife and so on. And therefore, within that framework of society, his mind remains reasonably undisturbed.
Acharya ji.
Yeah.
So essentially, this text is directed towards the early seekers in who can, move towards the worldly pleasures without any control, and for those sages, like you said, who already know that they are Brahman, then this
If you are a
attachment to the
jnani,
body
this text
concept.
cannot be addressed to you at all, because the jnani
Right.
is beyond any scripture.
Right, I understand.
A jnani is a very, scripture himself. Like, knowledge means Brahman. So it cannot be addressed to anybody but a spiritual seeker.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Pandana.
Raviji. I'm trying to follow through this thought process. So no desires must be, suppression is not the way.
No.
But we also saw that in Atmabodha that when you do karma to fulfill a desire, the fulfillment of a desire leads to greed, and the non-fulfillment leads to anger. Right? So thus inviting further action.
Yeah,
so
but what you do is
how
you accept it. That is why the karma yogi comes into the picture. In the karma yoga portion, you look at the second aspect. When you say Ishvara prasada buddhi, it means that whatever is the result of your action, whether it be fulfillment or non-fulfillment or partial fulfillment or partial failure, you accept that as a prasadam from the Lord. And you receive it in the same attitude with which you receive a prasadam, which means without resentment and with gratitude. When that happens, the hold of that karma phalam on your mind will decrease. You will find that your mind no longer gets disturbed. So the whole desire turns into something which we call non-binding desires. Non-binding desires are those desires where the fulfillment or non-fulfillment do not adversely affect your mind. The whole purpose of Vedanta is not to tell you not to have desires. It is to tell you that convert all desires, all binding desires, into non-binding desires. Once you have done that, your FIR is 0.
Thank you.
Okay.
So can I just
Yes,
confirm one thing?
Yes, Adil.
So since you just said the last statement that convert all the binding desires into non-binding desires, so that can be applied to both brahmacharya ashram and
Everywhere.
grihastha ashram and sannyasa, right?
Everywhere, yes.
Okay.
Every ashram will have a set of desires. Even a sannyasi will have some desires. So all those desires, if at all a desire has the capacity to affect your mind adversely, or even the other way, to make you, go into ecstasies, that desire is binding desire. Any desire which is capable of disturbing your mind, either by giving you a lot of joy or an excessive joy or depression, are all classified under binding desires. And therefore, the whole progress is to move from that to a state where the desires are not fulfilled. I don't get very upset.
And that way, by converting desires in any form of lifestyle that you're living, then you can go towards the spiritual path, no matter which path you're choosing.
No matter whatever you are doing.
Okay, thank you.
Acharya, please can you repeat that again, please?
Sorry?
Can you please repeat what you said?
I said a lot of things, Dimple, which I talked about.
About the desire again.
See, a desire can affect your mind by way of being non-fulfilled or fulfilled for that matter. If it is fulfilled and you're excessively joyful, it is affecting your mind. It is giving you excess joy. If it's not fulfilled and you're depressed, again, it is affecting your mind. So if you can work your way through this karma yogi pattern into ensuring that whatever the result, good, bad, favorable, unfavorable, partially favorable, your mind is not disturbed. That kind of desire is called non-binding desire. That is the best way to have desires. You can have desires, but they should not, become binding on your mind. Binding meaning that which can disturb the mind. A desire which is capable of disturbing the mind is called binding desire.
Thank you, Raviji. Understood.
Om Acharya, you said something in between about Manushya is not Manushya until he's sannyasi or something. Can you repeat
I
that?
said the sannyasi. Shankaracharya normally takes that
Something.
stand. So we will not, go into that. Shankaracharya will find that he talks about sannyasis only. Non-sannyasis are not very, much in his radar.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so with this we'll stop. Thank you for your patience. Please go over the 2-3 verses we have done so that when we come back next week, we'll be able to understand them all properly. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your
Om Namah
patience.
Shivaya, Acharya. Acharya, where
Om
will you
Namah
share this
Shivaya.
recording?
Sorry?
Where will you share this recording?
In this group only.
Okay, thank you so much. Om
Om
Namah
Thank
Shivaya.
you, Acharya.